Former Georgia State Senator and current candidate for the Congressional 3rd District here in Georgia, Mike Dugan, joins us now. Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with this. You're running for Congress. Why are you asking folks for their vote?
Because it's a combination of things. The leadership I bring to it, the experience I have, the background that I have, and the representation I've had in a majority of the 3rd District already makes me keenly qualified to be able to represent the entire district. Been there my entire life except for the time that I was in the Army and moved back there as soon as I retired from the Army. So I know the area. I've lived the area. I've represented a lot of the area. I think I'm the best choice to represent.
We're in a runoff now.
We are.
It's you and Brian Jack.
That's right.
Why should someone vote for you over your opponent?
I'm a much better opponent. Nah, I'm biased on that too. This is what I was talking about a second ago. It comes down to you got to have a level of leadership that's representing you in the district. The leadership that I have learned from early childhood, that was refined during my 20 years plus in the Army in a variety of situations. The leadership that I had in the senior role within construction industry afterwards, and the leadership that my peers honestly gave me as the majority leader of the Georgia Senate are all things that help position me to be able to more effectively represent our constituents.
If you're sent to Washington, D.C., what's going to be your number one priority?
Number one priority is, and this is going to sound kind of strange, it's not a big grandiose idea, it's learn about the people that are around me first, those that are serving with me, because you have to know who you're going to be able to work with. I mean, there are people up there that have different visions and versions of why they're wanting to go to Washington. Some title, some for other reasons, but I want to find the ones that want to work. Now, position thing, the first thing that we really need to take care of is the border. And the border's an issue in multiple different ways. It's a humanitarian issue, it's a national security issue, it's even a local law enforcement here issue that we have not effectively addressed. And that's something that we can make an impact on almost immediately.
You talk about if you get to Washington, if you are elected, figuring out who you're working with, who's working alongside you. You tweeted recently saying, and I'm quoting here, running for Congress is a job interview.
It is.
If you're elected, being a United States congressman is a high stakes job with serious responsibility. If it's a job interview, I want to ask you, if you'll permit me, a sort of traditional job interview question.
Sure.
So let me put it to you like this. Tell me about a time that you were in a high stakes position and you made a decision that didn't pan out and what you learned from it.
Oh man, a time or multiple times? Because anybody that has an area of extreme responsibility, there's going to be times where it does not go well. And I've said that 1,000 times even during this interview process. When it doesn't go well, you own those mistakes, you learn from those mistakes, and you never make them again. And most of them have come from a point where it was a lack of thorough enough preparedness in my part. And so that is one of those things I've learned. Never go into a situation unprepared. Never go into a position where you don't fully understand what you're getting into and how you're going to work within that environment. So that would be one of the biggest ones.
Talk about preparation. Your campaign website says, if elected, one of your top priorities will be combating inflation. If you're elected, what specifically will you do to combat inflation?
One of the things that drives me crazy about Washington is we have, it appears, no fiscal responsibility. Now, part of the benefit of serving in the state Senate for 11 years was we do have an appropriations process where we have to balance a budget every year. So when people go, we can't have tax relief and reduce the deficit, I'm saying, no, we've done that in Georgia for a long time now. And by the way, had a surplus that we put on the backside in case of emergencies later on. We can do it if we're willing to make the effort to actually be honest with our voters and say, there may be some areas where it causes you a little bit of discomfort for a little bit, but we have to control our spending to bring the deficit down, or we're going to be in a point where we don't have to worry about some country invading us. they'll just financially own us.
If it's that simple, why isn't it being done?
It's a great question. Don't know. Lack of leadership, lack of willpower, lack of the ability to work together as a cohesive unit, the lack of what I see, and from my perspective, is a lack of desire to actually work and produce results. It seems like we get preoccupied with other things, the shiny object, as opposed to the hard work. And I understand why that happens sometimes, because the hard work is hard work. The shiny things are kind of easy to do.
The third place finisher in the primary election for this race, Mike Crane, recently announced that he is endorsing your opponent,
That's
Brian
right.
Jack. How does that change the race, do you think?
Well, it's obviously Mike is a well-respected member within the area. He and I served together in the Senate. It's honestly head-scratching to me a little bit, based off all the things Mike said during the time that he was still in the campaign. But you know, any time that somebody does that, it creates a little bit more of a challenge. That's why I'm thankful that I've had 8 of the sheriffs endorse me, with 5 of them endorsing me post May 21st. I've had 26 legislators endorse me. You know, those are people that I work with day after day. And going back to the leadership piece a little while ago, those are the ones that said, this is the type of leader we need to send to Washington.
You use the word head scratching when talking about Mike Crane endorsing your opponent. You served together in the Georgia State Senate.
For 4 years, yeah.
Does it bother you that he'd endorse your opponent and not you?
Of course, you'd want everybody to endorse you, but that's not the end of the world. You know, that's just a guy that has made a position that he's going with. Yeah, I'm just going to continue to run my campaign.
Let's talk more about your campaign. One of the big issues that we hear a lot about, both in polling and from voters that we talk to, is a keen focus on abortion. Mm-hmm. Do you support a federal policy limiting or banning abortion access?
I'm very pro-life, and you probably are going to get into a question about the heartbeat bill that we passed in Georgia while I was the majority leader. Fully supported that. But I'm also a big proponent of states' rights. I think one of the issues that allowed us to get to the point that we're at today is the Supreme Court said that these were not federal ones, these were state issues. And as much as we can to empower our state governments, we should. Part of the issue, even going back to the budgeting thing a little while ago, is the federal government often gets involved in stuff that it's not really federal government responsibility. So let the states run the states.
And I just want to put it to you really clearly. We try to throw strikes down the middle here to make sure we get kind of clean, straight up answers. If I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying you do not support federal legislation on abortion access, whether limiting or banning it.
That would be the clear opposite side of, I think the states ought to control the state's business.
Talking about the Georgia heartbeat bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but the legislation there barred folks, except in limited circumstances, from getting an abortion after 16 weeks of pregnancy. Is that correct?
I think it's shorter than that. I think if you look back, it's I think it's 6. And that's short. But what they always forget on the other side of that thing is that increased medical care for maternal health, medical care for infant health. Because one of the things I noticed as I was coming into the Senate that really became a passion area of mine is Georgia ranked towards the bottom in the nation. And when I say towards the bottom, like 49th in infant maternal mortality rate. And that's with everything that we have here. I mean, just look at the environment that we're sitting in. That should never be the situation of Georgia. It shouldn't be a situation from any state in the U.S. And so we forget that all these things were tied together on that to focus on the wellness of moms and the babies, and actually to hold the dads accountable as well.
If I'm hearing you right, I mean, states' rights are a big concern for you and something that you support when we're talking about the principles of federalism, right?
Yeah, you use the term concern. It's just a belief of mine that I'm a little bit more of a constitutionalist than some people would give me credit for. But if the states are responsible for running as much of the government as they can, where it's not enumerated within the Constitution, but like education, we always talk about federal government needs to do this with education. That's fine until it's somebody in the federal government that you don't like that's telling you to do something else with your education. The states should be responsible, and the states empower that, even in Georgia, further down to counties and school districts, to let them empower their curriculum. It's done like that with elections. You know, it's as much as we can. States ought to do what states do, and the federal government ought to focus on what the federal government is responsible for focusing on.
The Georgia Heartbeat Bill, and I just want to close the loop on this here. The Georgia Heartbeat Bill, critics have argued that it's not the place of government at all to be legislating what a woman can or can't do with their own health care. How do you respond to those concerns?
It is obviously a very passionate subject, and there's no way that you can do this and be a feeling human being and not be empathetic with all sides of this issue. But at the end of the day, when you're in the legislature, you have to vote. And in Georgia, we don't have a don't vote. You have yes and no. So as far as the pregnancy goes with the heartbeat bill, in my mind, as I'm going to vote, there are 3 humans involved in this decision. There's a man, a woman, and a baby. 2 of them had a say in the process. The 3rd one didn't. I'll vote for that 3rd one all day long.
And in your view, that 3rd one, that fetus, reaches viability, reaches personhood at
the heartbeat. So that's obviously open to discussion. That people have different debates on this thing, but that's in the bill that I voted for. So I must believe that.
Let's turn. In a recent Noonan Times Herald piece, it reported that you said one of the bills you were proud to have been a part of during your time in the state Senate was SB 202. It's known as the Election Integrity Act. Mm-hmm. This was legislation that came in the wake of the 2020 presidential election. Why was that something that stood out to you to highlight from your time serving in the state Senate?
So that was my first year being majority leader to start with. It was so that first year, you talking about messy situations? That first year walking into that session as majority leader, we had a budget deficit in Georgia that we're going to have to address that had an 8% reduction across the board. We had a boat pulling into a harbor in Seattle with this strange kind of food poisoning on there that ended up not being food poisoning, that ended up became the pandemic. And then we had the 2020 election. So while I'm proud of it, while all this was going on, there were decisions that were made that were not in Georgia law, that were done by executive order for the elections in 2020 because of the pandemic. They had a significant impact, in my mind, on the 2020 election. So the Election Integrity Act that we started putting together, and we went around the entire nation and looking at different states' election laws. But our charge, our goal, was to create an election bill that made it as easy as you possibly could to get registered to vote, to exercise your right to vote, and to vote, but hard to cheat. And it's funny, you know, one of the first things that came out afterwards was it's always an 80-year-old lady who's standing out in line for 4 hours in the sun while it's coming down rain and she can't have a bottle of water. And I said, well, 2 things. That's only 150 feet in. And second one, the bigger issue is, why is she standing in line for hours? Why do we not have a voting process in place where you can more expeditiously cast your vote and get out of there? That's what 202 does. It kind of always shocked me a little bit that during the coverage of it, it sounded more like it was an election inhibitor. And it's really not. It's an election enhancer. And you've seen that multiple times since then. The 2 major elections since then, we've had record turnout across the state of Georgia.
That legislation came in the wake of, as you mentioned, a contentious, controversial presidential election. Mm-hmm. There are some in your party still who question the validity of the outcome of that race. So I just want to put this question to you squarely. Is President Joe Biden the lawfully elected president of the United States?
I've said this 100 times now, and I will say, and I'm saying this with a smile, the only people that really talk to me about the 2020 election and say it keeps brought up all the time is members of the media. So I'm going to answer your question now. I think that Joe Biden won through the system that we had in Georgia at that time. Georgia, I was talking about a second ago, I think he did it because of changes in policy that were outside the law in Georgia that are now codified through different ways that changed the balance of the vote in Georgia. There, you look at numbers that happened then that were, right in the middle of the pandemic, that were unusual. They were abnormal. So I can see both ways. I can see that I think in a normal given year, Trump would have won Georgia. And I can also say with a straight face that Biden was the legitimate winner of Georgia. Those are not exclusive topics.
We talk a lot, and this is the last thing I want to put to you, we talk a lot about the urgent issues, the most near-term issues in campaigns and in conversations like this, but I want to give you now a space to look downrange, look into the future. In 5 years, in 10 years, what's going to be the biggest threat facing the United States and facing Georgia in particular? So
during this, and I'm not trying to be a smart aleck, but sometimes I am, this hypothetical answer here, what all have we solved up to that point? I would like to know that the border's taken care of. Do we have spending under control at this point? Is AI been addressed internationally to figure out what the confines are? Have we made a final determination on TikTok to how are we gonna, I know what the ruling is. I understand there's challenges to that. Where are we on TikTok? And at the end of the day, what is the civility within the rule of law between members of all branches of government, where people who can disagree and vehemently disagree with each other's position on something can actually do it in a civilized manner.
Mike Dugan, is there anything I missed that you think is important? The floor is yours.
All kinds of stuff. No, I thought you were very thorough, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come up here. It is, we got the election on Tuesday, and it's been a long race, but it has been really enjoyable. The people that I've gotten to meet, the towns that I've been to, and that I would not normally have been able to, and it's been a super great experience, and I'm positive that Tuesday's going to turn out the way we want, and I'll be able to represent the people of the 3rd District.
We'll be watching closely. Mike Dugan, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.